October 14, 1939, just after midnight, in the ink-black sanctuary of Scapa Flow, the Royal Navy's vaunted northern bastion amid the Orkney Islands' gale-scoured shores, a single torpedo from the prowling German-type WWII submarine U-47 pierced the defenses like a assassin's whisper. Commanded by the resolute Kapitänleutnant Günther Prien, a 32-year-old submariner whose steely gaze and unyielding discipline had already marked him as one of Admiral Karl Donatz's favored wolves, the U-boat unleashed its fury upon the World War I-era Revenge-class battleship HMS Royal Oak. This 29,150-ton behemoth, a survivor of Jutland's 1916 maelstrom where she had fired her guns in Britain's finest hour, now lay at anchor in the central basin, her 15-inch rifles silent sentinels against the night. The initial strike, a muffled concussion at precisely 1:04 a.m., jarred the hull with a dull thud that reverberated through her steel bones, severing the starboard anchor chain and sending tremors through the decks. To the 1,234 souls aboard, many dozing in hammocks or manning anti-aircraft watches below the armored deck, it registered as a banal harbor mishap, perhaps a flare in the paint stores or a boiler's petulant cough. No klaxons shrilled, no frantic calls to action stations pierced the complacency. They were catastrophically deceived. In the span of mere heartbeats, Prien's reloaded tubes spat a second, apocalyptic salvo at 1:16 a.m., 3 fish slamming home amidships from 3,000 yards out, their 617-pound hexanite warheads, far deadlier than the 450 to 500-pound blasts the ship's 1920s anti-torpedo bulges were built to blunt, rending the armored deck and igniting cordite caches in a magazine. A fireball roared skyward, devouring the stoker's mess, the boys' quarters, and the marines' berths in a hellish inferno, while seawater gushed through yawning gashes and open portholes, blackout-shrouded but treacherously uncaulked in the harbor's false security. By 1:29 a.m., Royal Oak had heeled to a vertiginous 45 degrees starboard, her gun turrets slewing wildly as she rolled beam ends, then capitulated to the abyss with a guttural moan, vanishing upside down into 100 feet of chill, oil-slicked murk. This was no prolonged agony but a compressed apocalypse, 13 minutes from fatal impact to final plunge, claiming 835 lives, among them Rear Admiral Henry Blagrove, the fleet's senior officer afloat, and 134 boy seamen, lads as young as 15, their tender years a searing emblem of war's indiscriminate maw. In the fortified cradle of Scapa Flow, hailed as the world's most impregnable naval redoubt, the inconceivable had transpired, a breach that would echo through the annals of naval audacity and hubris. Scapa Flow's aura of invincibility was no idle boast but the fruit of a century's labor, a 125-square-mile natural amphitheater ringed by Orkney's rugged isles, its entrances throttled by a gauntlet of man-wrought perils fused with the archipelago's primal ferocity. Since World War I submarine dreads, the Admiralty had entombed obsolete hulks across the Narrows, merchantmen like the Seriano and Numidian in Kirk Sound, decommissioned cruisers, and purpose-scuttled blockships forming a rusting, razor-edged labyrinth designed to gut any intruder slithering beneath the waves. Anti-submarine booms, steel mesh veils hauled taut by tugs from seabed to chop, draped the western gates like iron portieres, patrolled by drifters and trawlers whose hydrophones and depth charges prowled for echoes in the deep. Shore batteries bristled with 6-inch guns, searchlights raked the gloam, and lookouts, scarred veterans of the Great War, scanned from clifftops under the ceaseless Orkney wind. The terrain abetted the artifice, serpentine channels like Hoxa Sound churned with 8-knot tides that could spin a vessel into vertigo, a seabed scarred by sheer drop-offs and needle-sharp shoals, whirlpools that swallowed the unwary. Pre-war drills and assessments, buoyed by the ghosts of failed Teutonic probes, U-18 rammed and captured in 1914, UB-116 depth charge to oblivion in 1918, deemed penetration a suicide's folly. Capital ships, including the creaking Royal Oak, refitted in the 1930s with enhanced anti-aircraft batteries to guard against Luftwaffe shadows, clustered in the heart, swaddled in layers of steel, stone, and surge. Yet such fortresses demand unceasing nurture. Gales frayed booms, tides gnawed at blockship moorings, scouring ephemeral paths through the eastern shallows, patrols, taxed by the phony war's eerie hush and the fleet's recent sortie chasing phantom raiders, thin to skeletal vigils. Overconfidence, that velvet toxin, seeped in where rigor should have stood sentinel, eastern routes like Kirk Sound, charted as a submariner's graveyard of hulks and 2-fathom mud, dismissed as self-sealing by geography alone. Scapa Flow was forged for perpetuity, but the sea, that eternal iconoclast, reshapes all in its image. Lurking in this bastion's eastern flank was the chink that fate, and Prien's prescience, would prise open. Kirk Sound, a sinuous defile British hydrographers had long branded impassable, its 200 to 400-foot throat clogged by the wrecks of Seriano, sunk March 1939, and Numidian, flanked by shallows that plunged to 24 feet only at the year's highest floods. Surveys in 1938 and May 1939 by HMS Scott had flagged a navigable vein, perilously narrow and current-lashed, yet Admiralty thrift and war's onset delayed reinforcements. The collier SS Lake Neuchatel, earmarked as a blockship, bobbed idly afloat on that fateful eve. No booms enmeshed its approaches, no Aztec buoys hummed, no patrols threaded its hazards lest they founder on their own thorns. Resources skewed westward to Hoxa Sound's busier lanes, where tugs winched safe passages for the fleet. Storms and surges had quietly widened the seam, carving a fleeting corridor viable solely under new moon's shroud, slack tide's mercy, and aurora's ethereal glow, demanding a pilot's nerve to calibrate depths to the fathom, throttle speed to a phantom's creep, and wrestle eddies that yanked like vengeful specters. The lapse was not cataclysmic but chronic, charts frozen in presumption, inspections lapsed amid competing cries for convoy escorts and North Sea sweeps. What germinated as redundant bulwarks withered into a parchment fortress, its might a veil over creeping decay. In a dominion of ceaseless motion, inertia courted ruin, and beckoned a predator schooled in the ocean's riddles. Günther Prien emerged as that predator incarnate, a Lübeck-born mariner whose path from merchant apprentice to Kriegsmarine ace traced a saga of quiet ferocity. At 32, with U-47, his sleek 218-foot charge, laid down in Kiel in 1937 and commissioned under his hand in 1938, he embodied Donit's wolf-pack ethos, not brute charge but scalpel incision. Tasked with Operation P, a reprisal for the 1919 internment scuttling of Germany's high seas fleet in these very waters, Prien dissected the enigma with a cartographer's zeal. Luftwaffe overflights on October 12 fed him mosaics of the anchorage, U-14's September reconnaissance sketched tidal ghosts and patrol voids, ephemerides aligned his thrust to the October 13 high neap, when lunar pull and slack currents would midwife his passage. Mental dry runs etched the ballet, ingress surface on silent electric motors to mute the diesel's growl, hugging 50 feet south of Seriano, ballast tweaked by tons to kiss 15.5 feet draft against the floor. Kirk Sound's scorned gauntlet became his theorem, psychology as ally, for British faith in its futility left the east a shadowed no-man's land, bereft of Hoxa's clamor. On the 13th's gloaming, U-47 ghosted in, conning tower skimming the veil between worlds. A rogue current hurled her toward Numidian, lookouts cried cable ahead, U-47 grazed it with a metallic rasp, her stern kissing the ooze in a lurch that iced Prien's spine. He pivoted with surgeon's grace, port screw halted, starboard eased, rudders hard over, freeing her to slither past St. Mary's Hamlet, 850 yards off, where a dance hall's merriment flickered and a taxi's slotted headlight, later pinned to driver Bobby Tulloch, ferrying revelers from Kirkwall, swept perilously close, etching U-47 silhouette in unwitting betrayal. No alarm stirred, Prien pressed on, breaching the basin under the Northern Lights' spectral aurora, a 1.5-hour prowl unveiling 51 vessels, Royal Oak foremost, her silhouette mistakable for the absent repulse in the half-light. Audacity here was no roulette but algebra, where complacency slumbered, precision struck. The requiem ignited at 1:04 a.m., U-47's bow tubes loosing 3 G7E torpedoes, a fourth jammed in its tube, one lancing true into Royal Oak starboard bow, the dud pair vanishing into the murk, victims of early war teething woes in pistols and depth keeping. Confusion reigned aboard. Captain William G. Ben, roused from his cabin, dispatched damage parties to chase phantoms within, while the crew, many in nightshirts, boys like 17-year-old Arthur Smith on bridge watch, muttered of stores ablaze. 22 minutes of grace for Prien, reload, reposition 3,000 yards off, sights locked. Then, at 1:16, the Trident avenged, 3 impacts amidships, breaching the blister and armored deck, birthing a maelstrom of flame that gutted compartments and kindled the magazine's pyre. Power cascaded into void, darkness absolute cloaked the vitals as Royal Oak yawed to 15 degrees, then 45, her world inverted. Floods roared through unlatched hatches and portholes, left ajar for the balmy autumn air, their blackout scrims no bulwark against the deluge, trapping hundreds below in twisting warrens of steam and screams. Ladders buckled, bulkheads groaned like dying beasts. On the reeling decks, officers like Ben bellowed into pandemonium, but order dissolved, port lifeboats crushed against the listing hull, starboard ones capsizing into the oil-fouled churn. Men, ratings, Marines, those wide-eyed boys, leapt into the 50-degree brine, clawing for the tender Daisy II, whose skipper John Gatt would win the Distinguished Service Cross for hauling 386 from the slick, their cries mingling with the ship's death rattle until 4 a.m. 13 minutes sufficed for the Titan to founder, her prow spearing the ooze at coordinates 58°55'44 and 2°59'09 W, beam awash in 100 feet, her inverted hull protruding 16 feet skyward like a drowned monument. No dirge marked the close, only the sea's stoic hush, and a toll of 835 etched in eternity, the largest single-day Royal Navy cataclysm, its boy seamen's loss, 134 souls under 18, a parliamentary thunderclap that would bar youths from frontline steel henceforth. Submerged in Scapa Flow's sepulchral grip, Royal Oak's husk persists as a corroded crypt, a war grave cradling her unrecovered in steel-shrouded vigil at 100 feet, her form a 3D mapped specter from 2019 sonar sweeps that unveiled twisted turrets and torpedo scars. Enshrined as a controlled site under the 1986 Protection of Military Remains Act, she defies desecration. No rogue diver breaches her peace, no trophy hunter plunders her bones. The Royal Navy mounts annual rite, a patrol vessel stations overhead, divers planting a white ensign at the stern in solemn drift, wreaths borne on the tide, while periodic audits with ROVs fend entropy's siege. Relics like the salvaged bell toll remembrance at Portsmouth's Naval Cloister and St. Magnus Cathedral's plaque in Kirkwall, where 833 names, Blagrove to the last boy, form a litany against forgetting. Environmental sentinels purged 1,600 tons of her 3,000-ton fuel cargo by 2000.